Thank you very much. Uh, I think let me begin by saying that it's obvious that teachers and students are the heart of the university. But from what we have heard today, as indeed perhaps in the hearings of three preceding hearings, it's clear that both these sectors, that is teachers and students, which are the heart of the university, have been subjected to harassment of different kinds, and as we've heard, a denial of their basic rights. Now, I think there are very serious concerns over these developments and the administrative measures that have been outlined by the five faculty representatives of JNUTA, the administrative measures that have been taken by the Vice Chancellor, which clearly encroach upon academic freedom and autonomy in decision-making processes in JNU, which is, over the past 2 years or so, leading to the destruction of established norms, rules, conventions, and, as was just very eloquently pointed out by Vinod, the culture and ethos of the university. Now, we have heard enormous evidence, and very detailed evidence has been presented by the JNU faculty, which I think clearly points to repeated violations of statutory provisions and obligations. To me, the most disturbing trend is really the gross violations in the appointment and promotions of the faculty. Now, there are at least, when it comes to Article 4, there are basically two sets of issues that we've heard, and both seem to suggest very, very serious violations. One concerns promotions, the other concerns harassment of teachers. Now, from the evidence that we've heard from at least 3 or 4 of the teachers, it's clear that promotions have been denied to teachers under the career advancement scheme. Selection committees have been routinely manipulated, and what is really surprising is the manipulation of minutes of the selection committee. Now, this, I think, the manipulation of the minutes of the selection committee, not presenting them to the relevant bodies, is really a very gross violation, because minutes are like a legal document, and manipulating minutes is really manipulating effectively the whole selection process. So it's clear from the evidence that we've heard this evening, which is that there have been very serious irregularities in faculty appointments in JNU, and this really surprises me, because I have taught in JNU for nearly 40 years and have been associated with this university for such a long time as chairperson of the Center for Political Studies and the founding director of 2 new centers in the School of Social Sciences, and I've also been associated with some of the vision programs that Professor G. Arunima was talking about, and have been associated actually with, in a certain sense, working out, if you will, the vision of the new 6 or 7 new centers that were established in the School of Social Sciences over the past 6 to 7 years. And given my long association with the university, I'm really shocked to hear about the violations that have taken place over the last 2 to 3 years. And in fact, such violations were unheard of in all the years that, as I said, that I've been associated with the university, and have also been in administrative positions, and have held administrative positions in the university. Such blatant and basic violations as manipulations of minutes is something that I can't recall any such instance being pointed out to us. Secondly, then, the second issue, which is also a matter of grave concern, is the harassment of individual teachers, but as the JNU TA, and we were given two examples, one of Professor Rajiv Kumar and the other of Professor Nivedita Menon. But I think the JNU TA representative very rightly pointed out that the issue really is not individual teachers, but individual teachers being singled out or being made an example so that others fall in line. Now, I think in this instance, perhaps the most egregious example of harassment of teachers, I think, is the removal of Professor Nivedita Menon from the chairpersonship of the Center for Comparative Politics and Political Theory, when she raised legitimate questions about the appointment of experts, but not only that, she raised questions about the integrity of the whole selection process and the way in which decisions with regard to the selections were being taken without appropriate or adequate discussion. Now, and then, as was pointed out by one of the JNUTA representatives, that matters did not end there. She has been, she was, of course, she has been removed without being given an opportunity to explain her position. And again, as I said, matters did not end there. She was subsequently issued an order that she cannot be part of any statutory body for the next 5 years, which effectively rules her out from being appointed the chairperson of the center, let us say after the end of the present chairperson, who took over as chairperson when she was removed after 2 years. Now, so all of this, these two very important areas, which is to say faculty promotions, and of course there are several other issues that have been raised with regard to salaries and pensions, but I'm not going into that because I think these two are illustrative. The two that I have raised are illustrative of the problems that concern all of us. Now, as to Article 5, which is really a matter of can't say greater because all of them are a matter of great concern, but nonetheless, I would say that the issues that have been raised by the JNU TA representatives in their charge sheet against the Vice Chancellor with regard to the destruction of the academic and democratic environment of the university, again are, I think, extremely important. And let me just very telegraphically, again illustratively, mention 3 or 4 issues that have been raised. And I think adequate evidence has been presented, more than adequate evidence, in fact, has been presented to underline the way in which the democratic structures of this university have been underlined. Very quickly, I think there are 3 or 4 areas which are again areas of concern. One is, of course, the centralization and control of decision making. This is really the heart of the matter. This is a completely new environment because in the past, and as I said, I've been here for so long, I mean, their vice chancellors would come and go, and I think one would hardly ever even go to the administration building or to the vice chancellor's office, and one, in fact, always felt that JNU was such a well-running institution that it could almost run without a vice chancellor. I wish we could say the same now. So that was JNU until quite recently. So I think the centralization and control of decision making is a significant departure, very significant departure from the way in which JNU was organized and run over the past 4 to 5 decades. This clearly is responsible for the academic and one might even say administrative integrity being weakened. And a point was very rightly made by one of the JNU representatives in the charge sheet, which is that perhaps for the first time in the history of this very illustrious university, that the administration has come to dominate the university. This was one university which was, from the beginning till now, really dominated by the faculty, by academics, by students. For the first time, we hear so much about the administration. Thirdly, which I won't again go into detail, but there is certainly very substantial evidence that has been presented to us, which is with regard to the efforts, the very strong efforts that have been made to silence protest, especially silencing teachers. I'm not going into the student issue because that has already been dealt with in the previous hearings. So the teachers have been silenced, and the elected representatives of teachers have not been silenced. And I am really concerned about this because it took so long for the university really to come to a point where elected representatives were accepted. And it's only in the last 10 to 15 years that we've had elected representatives in the academic council and the executive council, and to have a situation where elected representatives, which really represent the collective voice of the university, are not allowed space or not allowed to speak. But the most important issue really is, I think, in my understanding as a teacher, is really the violation of the integrity of the faculty selection process. And here very quickly, I think that let me just flag two issues on which we've had considerable evidence, and one of them was, I expect, discussed in the previous hearings, and that, I think, is really the heart of the matter. And that is the panel of experts for selection committees for faculty positions. These, as we know, are panels that are recommended, discussed and recommended by the centers, which then go to relevant bodies within the school, and from there they travel up to the academic council and to the executive council. However, the panel of experts for selection committees for faculty positions are now being arbitrarily changed. Now, in fact, as the JNUTA charge sheet points out, and I think it has put it extremely well and has presented as again very substantial evidence to suggest that clearly the Vice Chancellor has arrogated to himself the authority to decide experts in all fields of study for selection committees. And I understand, although this evidence was not given, but I understand that the selection committees that have been held over the past few months, or perhaps even the past year or so, the majority of experts are really from outside the panels recommended and approved by centers, and recommended by centers and approved by relevant bodies of the university. I am given to understand that although we may not have exact figures about the percentage of experts in selection committees from outside the panel, but evidence is mounting that 2 of the 3 experts in most selection committees are from outside the panel. Now, with this kind of evidence, we don't really need any further evidence of the, as I said, of the violation of this whole process. Now, this brings me to the last point, and that is that really this issue that is to say, the panel of experts, now is, I think, linked to another very, very important issue which has been highlighted in the evidence that has been presented by the JNUTA. And that is that the Vice Chancellor has sought to bypass the principle of seniority in the appointment of deans, which will increase his control over statutory bodies and faculty selection process. Again, as someone who's been associated with this university for such a long time, I really do not recall any instance. I can't recall very many instances where the seniority principle has not been adhered to by a succession of vice chancellors. And certainly, there is really no case where 5 senior faculty members, outstanding academics, have been bypassed in the appointment of the dean of the School of Social Sciences. Now, I think the violation of the seniority principle in the appointment of deans, who we must remember are also members of selection committees, which was not the case until about 5 or 6 years ago. Deans have become members of selection committees only very recently, and which is why the whole question of appointment of deans is so very, very important. Now, I think the violation of the seniority principle in the appointment of deans who are members of selection committees, combined with the Vice-Chancellor's decision to arbitrarily add names to the panel of experts and the singling out of Professor Nivedita Menon for disciplinary action because she dared to question the faculty selection process, suggests an unmistakable attempt to increase the discretionary power of the Vice-Chancellor in the faculty recruitment process so as to overtly influence faculty appointments, which in turn will change the character of this university. And this, I think, is the most serious charge for which I think very substantial and convincing evidence has been presented, and certainly my verdict on this would be that the Vice Chancellor is clearly guilty of very gross violations. Now, I think all of these cases that have been presented with regard to Article 4 and 5 clearly indicate a trend of centralization in decision-making in the hands of the Vice-Chancellor in complete disregard of democratic norms. And I think there is also evidence that the Vice-Chancellor has abused his position to undermine the democratic structures of JNU, which, as I said a little while ago, had been working quite well on the basis of established rules and regulations and consultation and discussion from the center upwards to the academic council and not from the Vice-Chancellor downwards, as is the case. And I think, as was pointed out very, very rightly by one of the JNUTA representatives, that centers have been the basic academic and administrative unit of this university. The centers have had autonomy to take all major decisions in faculty meetings, and as all of us know, most centers in the Jawaharlal Nehru University have very regular faculty meetings. I can certainly speak for the School of Social Sciences, where there are weekly faculty meetings for 2 to 3 hours, where all of these issues are discussed and decisions are taken with regard to the teaching program and faculty recruitment as well. Now, I think so effectively, I think what we are faced with, and I conclude with this, that the edifice of JNU, the administrative and academic edifice of JNU is being changed, and I think at the center of this is the democratic decision-making structure of this university and the academic autonomy enjoyed by centers and schools in JNU. This was a model for other universities which wanted to actually emulate the JNU model of administration and working of centers. However, what we have heard today, and I have followed closely the proceedings of the three preceding hearings, I think the Vice Chancellor's actions have, to put it politely, damaged the democratic structures of JNU, which in the long run will weaken the intellectual